What is going on, guys? We are back and we have some news. Unfortunately, I didn't get to this the day that it came out. Unfortunately, working in retail just wasn't really available to be able to do this, but trying to get it as quickly as possible. We do have the Mythical Island mini expansion coming out on December 17th. Today is December 14th, so I mean, it's only a few days away. There's a lot of very interesting things that came out of it. I'm not going to react to the trailer itself onto this, but I do want to talk about the cards that came out, what sort of kind of I'm thinking early about them, and there's a few cards that I don't have like graphics for, but we'll talk about them a little bit at the end as well. So quickly, right away, you see the Superior and the Volcarona on the artwork, and so you know that we're getting those cards. They did show a Larvesta, they did show a Snivy. Hopefully they're really good cards and give some options there. Volcarona is generally a very good card in both the games and the TCG, and same with Superiors, though. Really looking to see that, but they did announce what is kind of going to be in this mini set. So there are 80 new cards or redesigned cards. We did see this a little bit. There was a second Tauros that we saw. There was a second Execute. There was a second Tauros. There was a second Magmar. So we did see a few things that were kind of repeats, but they have different effects, different HP stats in some of the cases. They have different attacks in some cases. So we also were told that there are 5 new EX cards. So we got to see Mew, we got to see Aerodactyl. We saw that Pidgeot EX is actually a mission. So we do have it confirmed that Pidgeot EX is one of them. And then in the description of the YouTube video, they actually announced that Celebi is another one. And I would really like to see Celebi be really good grass support. Like, the dream, anyways, is that it's going to be like a Moltres for grass types, because grass types need a lot of help. Now, that will kind of make Lilligant a little bit obsolete, I think, but that's sort of kind of something that I'm really looking forward to seeing. I think it'll end up being a grass type and not a psychic type, but you never know. We're also guaranteed 5 trainer cards, and we were shown 2 of them as well. They're both very, very good. Well, one of them I think is a lot better than the other one, but I think they're both pretty good. But let's get into the card sake here. The lovely Mew EX. Now, this Pokemon here looks very, very good. 130 HP, so it does live a hit from Starmie. It does live a hit from Pikachu EX, even with a boost. It lives Arcanine without a boost. Like, it does live a lot of hits. 1 energy retreat cost and 1 energy for an attack. So basically, this is the psychic type version of Zapdos, which Zapdos is a very nice wall, kind of utility wall in that sense. It can do a lot of damage, and it can kind of just chip away for Mewtwo to kind of do what it needs to do. So I have a lot of high hopes for this. I think it's actually possible. I don't know that we're going to see Baby Mewtwo go away. I think what we're going to end up seeing is that might be added on, or a replacement to, like, I know that I was teching in Jinx. And this just makes it seem like I would use genome hacking over using Jinx. I think it's sort of kind of what I think it's going to end up being like. The decks, like Pikachu, right? You're not going to genome hack them, and Mewtwo one-shots them anyways. But the Pokemon like Mewtwo, like even in a mirror matchup Mewtwo, for 3 energy instead of 4, you can do the 150 damage to the Mewtwo, right? And then, for example, and because the card doesn't say you have to remove the energy first, right? So you don't even have to have psychic energy. So I think this deck is going to really be able to take advantage of the fact that it's all colorless. It's 3 colorless energy. I think this card is going to get splashed into a lot to counter Mewtwo and Charizard. Because if you go for Charizard, you get the 200 damage, you don't have any fire type to remove, so you keep the 3 and you can just go for it again. Now, you're not going to have another Charizard probably standing in front of you, but it at least allows you to do what you need to do. If this is paired with Gardevoir, again, you can set this up in 2 turns very, very easily. So I think that you just put the 1 energy on when you play it, and then when it comes out to the active slot, the Gardevoir's in the back, puts the energy on, and you can just revenge kill something very, very nicely with this. It is a 2-prizer, which is why I do think that Baby Mewtwo is probably going to still stay on the Mewtwo decks. But I could see Jinx leaving for this really, really quickly. It doesn't do as well against like Venusaur or Blastoise decks, for example, but they're not exactly common, so I don't really think it's going to be too much of an issue when it comes to meta play. So I think that's Mew. I think this is a very, very good card. You know, it again, colorless energy lets you play it on any deck you want. If you don't care about Psy Shock, then you're not going to worry about Psychic Energy. It's a 1 retreat, 130. Like, people are playing Zapdos in decks and not running Electric Energy because it just is a wall that has a 1 retreat cost. So I think this card is very, very good. I would love to get my hands on a couple of these as quickly as possible. And then let's talk about the second card that really caught my eye, and this was Vaporeon. Now, some people are a little bit dubious on this card. I actually believe this is Misty support. You know, once you commit to playing Misty on a card, if you got 7 heads and you have 7 energy chilling on 1 Pokemon, you're kind of stuck with it, right? If that Pokemon faints, that 7 energy is gone, and so this actually lets you kind of redisperse that energy around. It's going to make Misty even better, which I know is going to upset some people, but it is totally possible, and I don't think that, like, this is strictly, like, in the normal TCG, and we might actually make a video on deck building in general, but you know, Vaporeon's a Pokemon that you might not ever want to have it use its move. You just want the ability on the bench. And so it's a really good utility Pokemon. I think people are going to probably run 1 Eevee and 2 Vaporeon like they do with the Arcanine builds in the Charizard decks. And you'll just have this washout ability there, just so that if Misty gives you too many heads, you can redisperse it, and now you have a lot of Pokemon online very quickly. In the case of playing with Starmie EX, right, there's already no retreat cost. So you can retreat Starmie out, use Washout multiple times per turn, put the energy on the 0 retreat cost Starmie that you switched out onto the next Pokemon, plus you can still play your basic energy. This basically sets up that if you have Vaporeon on the field, you can go from Starmie to Articuno on your bench basically in 1 turn, and the Articuno comes in fully healthy, 140 HP, attacks for 80, and does 10 chip to everybody, and then you can switch that around as you need to, and really be able to do a lot of damage that way. So I think this card is actually quite a good utility Pokemon. I think you're only going to want to have the 1 on the bench, and again, I don't think you're going to attack with it, so, but I do think that it does make the water decks a lot better. This actually has less HP than the previous Vaporeon we have, but I think it's so much better as a support Pokemon that I think this is going to be the one you're going to see. Now, obviously, it's a full art card. It might be hard to get, so I don't know if people are going to have it right away, and especially depending on how many people saved up pack points. You know, did people save the gold they got from the Black Friday deal? You don't know, right? So this card might be hard to get, but I think it's a very good card. The next full art card that I think is going to have some play is Dedenne. Now, Dedenne is just a cheaper Pincurchin in every way, shape, or form. It has 10 HP less. It attacks for 1 HP less. It does 10 damage less, and it has 1 retreat cost less. So it's still a basic Pokemon. The Pikachu decks still need to have this. I think this is just a quicker version of Pincurchin that requires less commitment. I think people are going to end up running this Dedenne over Pincurchin. Now, people are only really running 1 Pincurchin anyways, so I think it's a quick swap of them. There won't be too many issues there, but just a nice little cute card. I love this little Dedenne card, although I do think that some people are going to hate that. And not only that, Paralysis is by far right now the best status ailment in the game, because sleep, you can flip a coin and it does nothing. Like, you could have put something to sleep they never stay asleep, right? Because you could flip heads immediately and it was completely redundant. You just had the chance to flip heads, right? Where paralysis is like guaranteed. Like they're not moving that turn. They also can't switch. So I think this Dedenne card can do the 10 damage it needs to set up a Raichu in the back and do 150 damage and knock out a Mewtwo. And you paralyze the Mewtwo so it can't switch out. So it's actually kind of like a soft Arbok. If you can kind of get that strategy going, and I think this Dedenne card is really what you need. Now there's a couple ones that I think aren't as good, but have potential for sure. And so this is the second EX card that we saw, Aerodactyl EX. Now, Primeval Law. This stops your opponent from being able to evolve their active Pokemon from their hand. Now, the best decks in the game right now evolve their bench Pokemon, not their active Pokemon. Like if you look at Mewtwo, like Gardevoir is the Pokemon that you're trying to stop from evolving. It never ends up on the active slot. So I think if you compare this with Sabrina, I think you have something there, right? Or like a Pidgeot, like a non-EX Pidgeot. I think you have something there if you can prevent an evolution. But again, like Gardevoir is setting up from the bench and never going to the active slot. Greninja is the same way. You know, Charizard is the same way. Like, it doesn't really do anything against Pikachu. Like, I don't know that this beats the meta. I think this is just this has the same HP. It has the same attack power as Marowak if you just get the one heads, which is like 50% of the time. So I think this is just a non-coin flip version of that. The only thing that I could see being an issue with this, obviously the old Amber is an item, right? So at the moment, we don't have a way to search item cards. And so I'm wondering if not being able to Pokeball the old Amber makes Aerodactyl a little bit less consistent than Marowak EX in the end of it anyway. But I do think that the ability also doesn't seem to me like it has to be from your active slot. Like, I do think that this ability can be played from the bench. But it is interesting because, like, the Gengar card, for example, I think does specifically say that when it's in your active slot, your opponent cannot play supporters. This card doesn't say that anywhere, so I do think this can be activated from the bench. I don't think you need to have it on the field, but again, a lot of the best Pokemon are not running this, but not trying to evolve in the active slot. But again, you know, if you're lucky enough to get both the old Amber and the Aerodactyl in your hand turn one, I mean, you stop a lot of decks that are off meta, right? Like Weezing can't evolve. If you happen to go first, you stop, you know, Exeggutor, right? Like you can stop things like that. But I think you're stopping the non-meta instead of the meta. But either way, I think it's good support. I think that fighting types right now are fighting and grass, in my opinion, are the two that have the least amount of play right now, just in terms of what they can do to kind of keep up with the meta. I actually think that fighting is very, very fun to play. The also nice part about this is another one retreat Aerodactyl, right? It also has one colorless energy, so you can play it in combo decks with other typings. So that is something to kind of note with it, but I don't know if this is going to be a meta card. I think this is just a cool tech card that I think people will probably build a deck around, but I think Marshadow is the one that we're going to see, and I'm sorry I couldn't get a better picture, but Revenge is, again, the exact same as Aerodactyl, where it's one fighting, one colorless. You can run this in mixed decks. It's also a one retreat cost. It's a basic non-EX Pokemon that does 40 damage, which isn't great for 2 energy, but this is a very good revenge killing Pokemon. If you set this up on your bench, you let something go down, and then you come back, and this attack does 60 damage more if a Pokemon was knocked out the previous turn. So I think this Marshadow card is actually going to pair really well with like Primeape, for example, because Primeape has chip on it from the Mankey. If you have that chip, you do 100 damage. And then when that Mankey goes down, you bring in Marshadow. Marshadow does 100 damage again. Not many Pokemon are living 200 damage, right? Even if you do have the way to go around that. So I think this Marshadow card, you're going to see a lot of one-ofs in decks. And then it'll be kind of a tech card for fighting types, which they did need support. So I do appreciate this. And then we have our 2 trainer cards that were shown. So we have Blue and Leaf. And y'all already know that Leaf is the dopest character in this entire set because Leaf is a representation of us here on the channel. So I do really appreciate that. But Leaf is basically 2 X speeds in 1. Now, typically, if something can be played as an item and it's similar in quality to the supporter card, it's sometimes better to run the 2x speed still. But because TCG Pocket plays 40 less cards than the TCG does, I actually think that 2 Leafs are the equivalent of 4x speeds, and I think that's really promising. I mean, think about it this way, right? You switch out Baby Mewtwo for free. Even for Venusaur decks or Blastoise decks, right? Being able to use Leaf plus your 1 energy, or you even keep the X speeds in your deck, right? Like, I think this lets you play Snorlax a little bit better. I think it lets you do a lot of things. I think Leaf is a really, really good card. I think this one is, of these 2, this is definitely the best one. Blue works really well in stall decks. Now, at the moment, stall isn't really a win condition. Stall is more of a wait because I have a slow, bulky Pokemon in the back that can one-shot things, right? So I think Koga will benefit from Blue. Like, Koga decks will benefit from Blue. I think Dragonite decks will benefit from Blue. You know, Rogue decks like the Blastoise or the Venusaur decks, I think they will benefit from potentially being able to play some mind games. Any card in the 150 to 160 HP pool, I think are going to really appreciate having a Blue around because you do 10 less damage. It cancels out Giovanni, so it's kind of like Blue can cancel Giovanni out, so it fixes the math on some things, but I also don't think that every deck is going to really want to use this card. So we'll see how it goes, right? Obviously I could be totally wrong, but I think this is sort of kind of my early impressions of it. When it comes to the other cards that were shown, right? Tauros is a 3 energy, same HP, same retreat cost as the original Tauros, but it does 40 damage, but it does 120 if it's an EX Pokemon that you're fighting. Now, 3 energy for 40 is just not viable, and so it could see play as like an anti-EX tech, but it also doesn't live any Pokemon. It doesn't also live a single attack from any EX Pokemon other than Pikachu. And I think that's sort of kind of a problem for it. I don't think it's going to be played. Magmar is another one. It's basically same HP, same retreat cost, same attack energy requirement for a 30 hit point stronger Magmar, but you give up both fire energies to do it. So it basically becomes a 10 point weaker than Ninetales, but it's a basic that can be set up a little bit faster. So I don't know. I think that Blaine still would prefer Farfetch'd as the extra Pokemon and just continue to run the Giovannis and Blaines, but I could see Magmar having some play. It'll definitely get tested for sure, but I don't think it's necessarily as good. Execute. Basically a 1 colorless energy that attaches a grass energy onto this active Pokemon. So it technically does allow Exeggutor, like the base Exeggutor and Exeggutor EX, to be played in non-grass decks that run no grass energy, because it will give you that grass energy that you need. The only problem is that Execute only has 50 HP, and so if you go first, you typically want it to evolve on the next turn and get that 1 grass energy guaranteed 30 with the potential for 60, or, you know, in the EX form, 40 with the potential for 80. If you're going second, your opponent evolves, and then you might not have the time, right? So I thought it could fix the math. I thought you could run Leaf with Executor, and you'd already have the 2 energy attached, and then you'd be okay. I just don't think it's going to play out that way. I'm really hoping that Celebi is Moltres, but for grass types. It'll definitely make Venusaur be more playable. It's a more consistent wall. But we'll see there. And then Pidgeot. We've already seen a Pidgeot that acts like Sabrina that does 2 colorless energy for 70, right? I'm not sure what they're gonna do, but I think this Pidgeot needs to be more offensively inclined, or, you know, maybe it's the same as a Grapploct, where instead of being in a passive slot and has the ability to gust things away, you're gonna be in the active slot and repulse things away when you go for an attack. So I think that's sort of kind of what you might see out of Pidgeot. Again, it's a 2-stage evolution that I think it's gonna need some work to be good. But that's kind of what we've seen so far. Obviously, there's other things, right? Volcarona could be good. Superior, I think, could be good, depending. If it's a non-EX 2 evolution grass type that can do some real damage, I think there's potential there. But I think for right now, I do think Mew, Vaporeon, Dedenne are the 3 obvious good ones. Marshadow's another very obvious good one. I think that we'll have to see how it works as to whether or not Aerodactyl will be good. I do think it has potential, but I think it's going to need to be in the right deck. But that's sort of kind of what we have so far. Again, this is getting released on December 17th. I think I'm actually going to have a video coming out that day as well. When it comes to TCG Pocket, it's another how to play, but it's a deck that isn't part of this. I'm gonna have a couple videos set up so that I can kind of get the cards and then start showing decks with this. But early on, I did want to talk about what was released. It was a very cool trailer. I did appreciate it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think with the cards that were released, and let me know if there's any text that you see that maybe I didn't mention. But I do think that I covered it pretty well. But let me know in the comment section down below, and we will see you guys in the next